Ross will be on his way.
Ross is on his way. So I think this is a really good report. It's really interesting. It points out everything that we're doing to minimise our waste, and also the way that we are getting out, or the team's getting out into the public and really getting the message out there. So I think the data's showing that the yellow bin contamination is continuing to fall, which is saving us a lot of money, and people's awareness is growing daily. It's fantastic. So anyway, we'll wait for Ross, I think, before we've got more questions. One thing I did hear on the radio this morning was the amount of fly tipping that's happening in Auckland and costing a lot of money, and apparently we don't have that data, so I think we should look into being able to collect that data somehow, because it's going to be relevant with the increase in the levies. We may see more tipping, and so we need to know if that's a knock-on effect. So we're going to have to do something there.
We don't have the baseline that makes it different. Will people produce
Yeah. 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 Are you an ideas man? Yeah. Okay, I like it. I do like it. Okay. Helen, we're going to switch to your report. Some bright spark round the table thought it might be a good idea, and I agree. So tell Ross not to worry. Oh, what to do now?
Ross, you go.
Such a good idea.
Let's go on an old agenda.
Sorry, Ross, we didn't know how far away you were, so we were going to go to the next report. But welcome.
Apologies, thought I was on the end of the agenda, but
So
sorry about that.
we're on fire this morning, so it's not your fault. So, have you got an introduction to your report? We were just saying how good it is.
Thank you. Look, actually, I'm just working on the current report for his presentation in November. Look, probably some of the key points in the report is that we are making good headway in terms of the contamination and the recycling, and that is even improving since this report, which is encouraging. There's been some good initiatives. We've had some top 10 tips that we've put out to further assist people in getting that right. We are looking at moving into the malls and supermarkets to have face-to-face interaction with people, because we understand that some residents we're not getting to with the normal forms of communication. And we're also, we have just initiated something in our own building to assist with our own staff with a competition in between the floors to make sure that we are getting it right, so we can actually be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. The closed landfills, just a bit of an update with that. Bexley, we have actually started the work at Bexley last week. I do have some photos if anyone's interested as an update. Onuku landfill, we met with ECAN and the local Runanga over there on the 20th of September, just to look at progressing that. They do want to use that site for Waitangi Day celebrations, using the top part as a car park. They are unveiling a po and some adjacent bit of land on Waitangi Day. So we have worked with ECAN to make sure that we can at least have the car park provision done for that ceremony. The Bonds Bay landfill, we have scheduled to start that work next week after school holidays. So that is the removal of that landfill, with probably the majority of the material going to Cape Valley. However, we are having a transitional location where we're going to assess what can be recovered out of that landfill. So it may be things like the metals, it may be things like some of the material that might be classed as clean fill that we can actually put into a different type of landfill, which won't incur the same cost that we would as shipping all that to Cape Valley. Yeah, that's probably the main things going back to June, July.
Good. So, Mike, you've got a question?
Thanks, Ross. Just a question on the Bexley landfill. And it says in the report that the initial works are to clear the areas where birds are likely to nest prior to the nesting season.
Yes.
Hasn't the nesting season started?
Yep.
I thought it was September to February.
Yeah, so what we did, we actually had someone working through lockdown to check and see what nesting sites, if any, had been established by any species. And there was only one that could have been removed, and that was the only one that was there, and that allowed us to commence those works as per schedule. We have a similar situation with Le Bons. We are checking this week before we start the works next week to make sure there's nothing been nesting there in the interim.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Anne?
Kia ora, Ross. Just wondering in terms of education, whether there's an opportunity with the rubbish tins at the parks, in terms of, perhaps some notification for people what they could take home and what, so to kind of extend that education. Is there an opportunity for that?
Absolutely, we'd be happy to work. We don't look after that directly, but we'd be happy to work with parks and transport as well for the streets. I think any type of education, that's the feedback we get back, and even with what we're doing within this own building, the feedback we're getting from our own staff saying, I didn't know that, or querying certain aspects of what we're doing. A lot of it's just a misunderstanding, and if the more education we can get out there, so we'd be happy to look at that.
Yes, as we noticed that Eco Central are running really good programs getting out into the community.
Yes.
To schools. I know the St Albans Community Centre had them there for their AGM for the Residents Association a couple of months ago, and that's really good thing to do. So
Yep.
They're also, by the way, running a recycling project in their foyer where they've got bins for wine bottle screw tops, beer tab tier things, bread labels, and toothpaste and toothbrushes. Yeah. Which is really cool, because all that would go straight to landfill normally, wouldn't it?
Great, and there are schemes around for that, and it's really creating that awareness that these schemes are around, and my team are working in closely with Eco Central and doing joint presentations out in the community to certain groups. So it's really getting that consistency of those messages about what can be done and what can be diverted.
Yeah, great. Phil, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Down at the Burwood Burwood, the old one, I've had a question asked for me from the Residents Association. There's a hell of a lot that has been finished, and it all looks good, no problem. But they're just wondering if they can actually use some of that, because out of, say, 100%, 70% is finished and 30% we're still working on, but the whole 100% is still fenced off. And I know there's a residents meeting sort of coming up that going to.
There is, and what we were hoping to achieve was to have some of the residents go down to Burwood just to see what we have done. Yeah. We are trying to get as much open as we can, but it's really just there is works going on in a lot of those areas. For example, all the work and around the ponds, I'm not sure if it was in this report or not, there should be some photos.
Yeah, they're good.
All those have to be fenced off.
All the ponds have got to be fenced off? Yeah,
for health and safety reasons. So we can't actually open that up.
So we're fencing off ponds, but the next thing you know, we'll be fencing off the Avon River, do you think? I'm being facetious.
And we also, as you're aware too, the sensitive material at Site B, we are wanting to have just a ceremony there, a blessing there for that material, and that will be early next year that we're planning, and then it's handed over to Parks sort of mid to the third quarter next year, where it will be opened up.
It's because Transwaste have exited now.
Yeah.
Have we? Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. It's all finished. so-
It's just people were seeing it, how good it looks, and they just want to know when they could actually use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still a lot of planting. The other thing, health and safety wise, is just ensuring that we're still with the landfill gas, the wells there, that the well heads are nice and secure. And we've designed something because they have to be ventilated as well, because we can't have gas build up in there as well. So it's just
Thank you.
like sleepers that are built up.
So where does that gas go? I get a bit confused with the gas.
So
This
some of
one.
it comes to here, some of it wastewater treatment plant. So it's basically the gas is drawn out, and we have a treatment plant at Burwood, and then it's distributed through the gas lines through the wastewater treatment plant here, the art gallery.
Yeah, because I thought that was running out soon, but this report says it's been steady.
Yep.
So what's the life left in that, do you know?
It's a bit of a guess that the landfill is quite old. We have been putting new wells down and getting good results from the new wells, good production out of those wells, but understanding that there is a limited life to the landfill gas. That's why we're looking in other areas for other sources, and we're talking about anaerobic digestion for the organics, that sort of thing, as another source of potential energy, because we know it will run out at some point. But yeah, at the moment it is meeting our needs, but we know that will diminish over time.
Right. And, Yanni.
Thank you for your report, and just wanted to thank you for doing the kind of fly tipping campaign in Phillipstown, like working with the local residents. I think when council's looked at the past around addressing that sort of issue, I think a community-based approach, working with council staff, can be really productive. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But,
Thank you.
I just wanted to acknowledge that because I thought it was really cool that we're doing that. The plan's really kind of the key document in this report, but it's actually, because of the way it's presented on our computers, it's quite hard to really hard to get your head around. So in particular, I had several questions relating to it. One is, I'm just trying to understand how the new collection systems for inner city recycling is going. Like, how are we tracking in that regard around, obviously we had a lot of deputations through the long-term plan. Are we on track? When are we likely to get a report and then be in a position to introduce the new scheme?
Okay, so the stage we're at with that at the moment is we did a presentation to elected members probably about a month ago now, and we are working through with the bylaw changes, and we will be doing presentations through to the community boards and then out for consultation at the end of this year. So that is to look at the areas that we'll be collecting in, because we're looking at extending the curbside collection. There's some streets around the central city that we can actually do the standard curbside system. There's areas in Banks Peninsula where we can include in that as well. So it's all part of that whole program, including the differential charging. That has been able to allow people to the flexibility of the bin sizes and choose those and pay less or more accordingly.
So is that work going to be done in time to inform our draft annual plan changes, so that we can make any sort of budget changes required?
That's the plan.
As part of signing off on our draft annual plan?
Yes, that's the plan, yes.
Okay. And so we don't need to be putting budget bids in for that. Staff will just account for that.
We've spoken to finance and rates around that mechanism. The idea, of course, it is going to be cost neutral in a sense that we've got to understand that if we allow people to opt out of the system, that we need to recover that money somewhere else.
Yeah, the second question I had, or questions on the second item, was the plastics. So I'm just trying to work through the funding we got from central government. That's the problem with the spreadsheet. If I enlarge it to read it, then I miss the thing. But basically, the 16.5 million grant that we got to ECL for enhancing sorting of recyclables at MRF. It looks like the design is just starting and it'll be finished by March 22, and we're going to build in April. Are you able to give us any kind of update on how we're checking on that particular project and what work's going on around the types of materials?
Yeah, sure. What we've actually done is we've asked Eco Central to present at this next meeting in November.
Oh, okay. Great.
To provide an update, because I think they've gone through that procurement phase and are now looking at into the build phase now. So they'll provide an update in November.
Is it likely that there'll be, like, is it going to be quite prescriptive in that they have to go a certain way, or is it going to be that there's options around the level of investment that if we added a little bit more, we might be able to do more, or different technologies? I don't kind of know, but I guess I'm just interested if there'll be a decision point for us as a council, or whether Eco Central will simply make the decision.
Yeah, no, look, that's a really good question, because that's something we've been concerned about from our perspective. The money from central government has been very prescriptive, and it can only be used for the optical sorters for plastics and fibre, which is paper. We have been requesting that there be an additional pre-sort at the front of their operation, so that if there were truckloads of material that were coming in which may have been over the 10% threshold, that there was the opportunity to pull that contamination out, so that can still be accepted. So we're still working with Eco Central on that. It seems that there is going to be a restriction on space, so in the short term it may not be something that can be included in this, but it's certainly something we keep asking them that we need to have as a consideration in there.
Okay, just because in the past we signed up to, obviously we were the ones that made the decision around what got put in terms of the MRF, but for this particular case, Eco Central's the one that's going to make that call.
That's correct, and we've been asking to have that information as to, but we haven't been included in the decisions as what type of equipment that they've chosen, or who the provider is.
I mean, it's quite significant for us because they'll do what's in the best interest of the company, but we've actually got to look at what's in the best interest of our strategy and also of our costs. So yeah, I just glad that that's been flagged, and maybe we can think about a way to look at that.
And I think so. You can ask more questions. Well, it won't be till December, will it? That they'll come.
I think November is what because I think it's actually waste next meeting.
Oh, it is. You're right.
We're just hijacking this meeting.
It's just because
to ask those questions.
Yeah, but if you look at the time frame, like if they're starting the design now, you need to get in early. I mean, listen to what Ross has just told us. We do need to, I think, look at this.
I think we've missed that opportunity in the sense that they've designed it, they've ordered the equipment.
Oh, okay.
But we were asking them right through for that input as to what was going on.
But surely the funding would have conditions attached to it that it has to be a best practice model anyway.
Yeah, and like I say, it was very prescriptive as to what they could do with that money, and it was specific to the optical sorters. What we provided to Eco Central was the same business case that Auckland Council had put to the ministry for their funding. So we provided that to Eco Central, and that was what that was based on. It was that technology that could be used and because the money came through the Provincial Growth Fund, it was very specific about being for plastics, and they were able to add on about the fibre as well for separation of that, but it wasn't able to be used, as I said, for a pre-sort area or anything like that.
Which is a real shame, because that'll cost us a lot of money in the long run. Just two other quick questions. One is the whole issue of glass recycling. Where have we got to, or where are we up to with that?
Sorry, did you say glass?
Glass, separate glass recycling.
Yep. So that's forming part of our service delivery review. I just got a draft of that last night, so that'll form part of that. As to a big contingency there is what the central government is going to do with their container return scheme. that will significantly impact the amount of material that we receive in our recycling, the yellow bin.
Okay, thanks. And just finally, just the bylaw review and the clean fill bylaw. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the actual title. But I mean, the bylaw reviews. Will that include existing disposal sites? Like, I'm just mindful that there's one that's got a whole bunch of e-waste, metal, waste recovery. I mean, I was on one of those hearings a wee while ago, and I just wondered whether we're doing anything around the establishment of dumps, basically, in the city. Obviously, we've asked for some advice through the district plan process, but I wondered if there was any connection to the bylaw review that would look at just putting some, I guess, requirements on if people are going to run rubbish dumps and huge, massive recovery operations, you know, having some restrictions or controls on the activity.
Yeah, so there's two parts to the bylaw review, and one is with the curbside collection and the wheelie bins. The other side is the waste handling licences that we will be issuing. We currently do that. We only have a handful of those, so that there's not a huge number of independent operators who are handling waste. But yes, we have our criteria, and we will be assessing that on an annual basis.
What's the best way for us to feed in or look at that? Are we going to get briefed on that?
Yeah, look, I can make sure that we include that for the next TWE. I'm not quite sure exactly where that opportunity is to feed into that, so I'll find out and make you aware.
Thanks, Yanni. Phil, and then
Yeah,
Aaron.
thanks, Ross. With the new 16 mil thing, MRF we're putting in, there must be a time where nothing's happening. What are we doing with all the recycling that's coming in? Are we taking it to Cape Valley, or we're stockpiling it?
No, look, the EcoCentral have assured me that they are able to continue to operate.
Oh, good.
They've scheduled it as such in terms of the various components, and they will need to stockpile for a period of time. But that material will get processed, and we're not going to be diverting anything to landfill.
Good, thank you.
If it doesn't smell. Aaron.
Yeah, just got a couple of random questions. On the resource recovery, the Burwood Resource Recovery Park, in the photos there, it looks like we're still using the plastic plant wraps, are we? Why? Because I saw another photo further up where someone's using cardboard.
Mainly because we didn't have to pay for them. We're reusing them. They're old ones, and we're just reusing them.
When you get a bad weather event, you lose a few, and Burwood's quite close to the ocean.
Good point. We were BRRP had been using them, wanting to charge us for new ones, but we've said, look, we'll use the old ones. What I can do is ensure that, after a wet event like we've just had over the last few days, that we have someone go and actually look and see if there are any that are lying around that need to be picked up. But good consideration.
Yeah, or even there's probably volunteer groups that are happy to do it to get it before it ends up in the ocean.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I mean, should we be looking at moving away from the plastic, even though there'll be a cost to it?
Well, I would have thought recycled cardboard's cheaper than recycled plastic, but I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, but there have to be sleeves.
I mean, you can make recycled cardboard yourself in your garage. Try doing plastic.
In the red zone, they're using cardboard.
Yeah.
These are just recycled.
So if you could have a look at that.
Yeah, no, good point. We'll
It's actually not a very good look for us either to be continuing to use plastic.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that someone is, just checking to make sure we aren't actually. There is a distance between Burwood and the sea, but just, obviously wind can carry it, so we'll just make sure there's a clean up if required.
Yeah. I mean, 130 km/h winds. I'm picking up a relatively quick trip, but that aside, then do we, when we're doing a resource recovery, do we ever put a resource versus recovery lens on it, as in the cost of getting a product to something to say it's been recycled or reused or something versus it's just not worth it, we need to find another way?
Yeah, I think if you look at a number of items that are recycled, that there is a significant cost to that, and that is part of the work that the new campaign we are doing before we go for the consultation on the flexibility in the bin size, is actually for people to understand there is a cost to recycle because of some of the example, the plastics, that there is the costs of collection and processing and then separating out and to whatever market. So look, we are always looking at the viability of whether that's worthwhile, and then that comes back to working with central government and reducing those materials that are not practical to recycle. It's uneconomic.
So is recycle the right word to be using? Because originally, recycling made economic sense. People reused stuff in the system because it was economically viable and it made sense. Like, you took in the old newspapers, schools collected them, they made money, glass, so on and so forth. Somehow we've moved away from that, and now there's a whole lot of other stuff involved which makes it uneconomic, which for me, alarm bells should be going off, because I don't know how we move from that model to where we've got to.
Yeah, a lot of it is driven by the commodity prices, and there's a history there with Meta New Zealand and Eco Central. When the commodity prices drop, that the whole viability of the operation becomes more and more difficult. So yeah, there is a direct correlation between what is a commodity worth in terms of recycling it and turning that into new product, as to having other products which could be reused over and over. And this is part of the container return scheme as well, as looking at refillables, for example, rather than actually recycling materials. Can we use the old glass bottles and just refill those? So there is that work going on that looks at the economics of what is viable, because a lot of businesses that are green and doing the right thing, if they're not supported financially, then they don't work. So that's
so then they're not sustainable.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Then the next one is, someone recently posted, and some councillors would have seen it on Facebook, a piece of metal that got rejected from the recycle bin. It was steel. So I think it was an offcut of rebar or whatever. They're like, oh, this is a piece of steel. Metal's recyclable. We do it down at the dump, put it in the yellow bin, gets rejected. Why?
Yeah, and that's a hard one for people to understand. That the reason is that the plant can't process all that material. So metal is, excuse me, recyclable, but you put a bit of Rio in there and it's going to punch it through a conveyor or a screen, so it can't be acceptable as a something that can be recycled.
So are we not using a magnet?
Yeah, but it's before it gets to that. It's got to go. It gets all pushed onto a conveyor, which goes through a metering wheel and up through. And when we have people hand sorting, pulling things out, and that is really difficult to educate people that yes, okay, that is recyclable, but no, it's not something that we accept in the recycling bin, because it's a automated separating plant, which 25 tonnes an hour, you get something that's in there that's going to jam everything up. So it's difficult to educate people, but that's the reason.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. And that makes sense. Just drop it to one of the other ones.
And people get money for that if
Yeah, and then finally, on Yanni's point around the glass, we're still not recycling glass. Why not? And why have we not looked to solve the problem? Like the last 15 years, designer glass tiles, recycled glass tiles have been incredibly popular. We could have opened a plant and made glass. Like, why do we not solve the problem? We just keep going, oh, the commodity market's not working. But that'll always happen. Why not just solve the problem ourselves?
Yeah, and I think there's probably opportunity for glass proper facility like they have up in Auckland for basically it goes there, it gets melted down and created into new glass products bottles.
I think there's still a percentage of the population that think that happens. They don't realise it gets dumped. They actually think by putting it in the bin they're recycling.
Yeah, and part of that is the collection method by having commingled and having it mixed in. That the contamination of that glass through the MRF process is that's all it really can be used for is going into roading. So then you'd be looking at your separated collection. And when I say there's opportunity for that, there's twice as much glass in New Zealand in the system than can be processed up by Visi up in Auckland. So, and some of the restrictive issues
So
there.
why not a South Island plant?
Yeah, because I was going to say transport costs. So if you've got something local,
Okay, can we get a?
The
Can we
government's
get?
bringing in their container return scheme, so
Can we get like a paper or something on can there be a South Island plant? Obviously, it would be in Christchurch because it's the centre and half the population. But can we actually see the numbers on it? To like, if it can't work, it's just out of the question financially. Then we'll keep dumping glass. But if there's some sort of way it can be done,
yeah,
we
but
shouldn't
thing
keep
is that
asking the question year after
government's
year.
bringing in this container return scheme, which is probably
It
going
will
to.
only apply, but once again, it's greenwashing. It'll apply. You take your thing back and get 10 cents and stuff, but it doesn't get recycled.
No, that's the money. Like
Yeah, they'll collect a whole lot of money and not recycle.
The glass won't get
So hang on.
the,
I'll let Ross
you're right, but it then becomes the ownership of the glass. So whoever's after they've got their refund owns that glass, then there's their opportunity to have that business. So council may not need to.
So
be
that's a
involved.
false economy, though. That's not sustainable. It's not standing on its own 2 feet because the glass has a value. It's charge people more, so make products more expensive to get to the same point.
Yeah. So the consumer will pay additional to cover that
To
refund.
achieve nothing.
so
Well-
you don't socialise the costs of waste.
But you don't. Well, that's why I would like to see a paper come in that if there's twice as much glass in New Zealand than what Auckland can handle and Auckland can recycle it, what does a South Island plant look like to solve the problem locally? And that doesn't have also the distance and actually solves the problem, doesn't greenwash it with a charge per vessel, which makes no sense.
And it'll come down to who owns that glass once it's been, paid for, and whoever it is, whether it goes to Eco Central or wherever, there's that business opportunity. Council may not need to be involved directly in certain aspects of recycling and waste with the CRS, but also with some of the stewardship schemes. They'll be taken care of by the manufacturer or by the distributor. And to me, that's a better way of doing it, because at the moment we're just picking up whatever anyone wants to manufacture, and that's your plastics, threes, fours.
So to be clear, does the Auckland plant currently have a subsidy? Does that lose money?
I don't know how that.
How's it not the point? If
If you're talking the
recycling.
Visi plant,
Yep.
that's all in with similar to what we would have. Auckland Council pay Visi processing fee for all the curbside recycling, and glass forms part of that.
and they just smash it up, don't they?
no, they turn it back into glass. It's actually
Do they?
recycled.
Yeah. There's it goes through another beneficiation plant, is what they call it, to get out the contamination, and then that goes to Visi for processing into new bottles.
So I guess what Aaron's asking is would it be viable to have a plant like that in the South Island? Do you have any data that you could send us a memo back? We're not necessarily asking for a council to run a scheme, but would the South Island have enough product to make a plant like that viable here?
Yeah, and look, from what I know, that the cost of setting up a plant is in the sort of hundreds of millions sort of range. So whether that's scalable and you can actually get a plant that's, we can look at the ballpark numbers around that. But again, it's going to come down to who owns that glass. Now, if the CRS scheme doesn't come into play, and it stays the same with EcoCentral, then there may be an opportunity there for us to be involved, or EcoCentral to be involved in that. But I believe it's...
Is there anything you could flick us out in a memo of just out?
Yeah, look, I can do some
That's
sort
great.
of
Thank
ballpark and
Yep.
yeah.
So Leanne's got a couple of questions, then Phil.
It was just a random one because I was just following Aaron's lead. But the handheld battery recycling program, that's going well.
Yeah.
But there aren't enough places, that you could. Why can't we just have some bins downstairs so that people can use them? And it's just that. I mean, there's hundreds of people that work in this building or come into this building every day. It just seems to me that we want to make it easy for people. Every single venue is somewhere you have to get into a car to go to. There's nothing walkable.
Yep. Yeah. At this stage, it's a good idea. We do have something on the fourth floor, but not everyone knows about that. But it does come down to a cost and the collection cost associated. So we do have funding for this latest round, which we've got through MFE, ECAN and Canterbury Waste Joint Committee. And that money has been spent on spreading the scheme out through Canterbury. So because it was our initiative in Christchurch, we got the first round of money with the 7 receptacles that we had in around Christchurch. So it really just comes down to the money side of it for us to actually be able to have the receptacle and the servicing for picking that up.
How much do receptacles cost?
A couple of grand. Yeah. But the servicing may be, you might be looking probably $3,000 or $4,000 a year.
Yeah, compared to anyway. But anyway, that was my random, and I just want to say thank you for answering a question I've had about on the tips to bin good. So I've often wondered whether you take the sellotape off the cardboard boxes before you put them in the yellow bin, and it says you don't have to, but thank you if you do.
Yeah.
So really appreciate that. Thank you.
It's all good. No, welcome.
That's good. Hey, Phil's got one last question. We'll have to make that the last because we're running out of time.
Just put everyone in the picture. Ross is correct with the problem with our glass. It's commingled, and EcoCentral would be happy to not do glass because it wears out their machine. It's a pain in the neck. Following Aaron's observation, we don't recycle glass. We just dump it in a road, which we crush it and dump it in a road. Tasman, the only way to do this is to do separate glass collection, and Christchurch is the only city in the South Island that doesn't do it. Tasman all goes straight up to Visi. They've got a separate collection thing. They collect the glass separately in colours, and it goes. Ours is commingled and messy. All the rest of the stuff comes to a place in Christchurch which play around with it and collect it, clean, and then send it up to Visi as well. But we've got to look a lot differently at the way we're doing it. We've got to just change what we're doing. The container return scheme, in my view, is a bit of a smokescreen because it's stopping us taking the plunge to go to either one way or the other. If the government would actually say we're doing it or we're not, it would give some clarity on where we're going to land. So that's.
And we're expecting that announcement at the Wasteman's Conference in November. So then we'll have a direction from government. Yeah.
Great. If you could let us know, that'd be good. All right, and I said one last question about the fly tipping. Apparently we're not collecting any data on that. Is there any way that we can? We obviously contracted out.
Yeah. Look, once again, we asked for that data too from transport and parks, and it seems to be mixed up with other parts of the contract, so it's hard to get. The best information I've got is that it's around about 1.2 million, and it's split evenly 600k between parks and transport as the cost of that fly tipping. And look, and as Yanni mentioned, we are looking at being targeted in specific areas where we know it's problematic and working with communities to address that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ross. Good
Thank
report.
you. Apologies for my lateness again.
That's right. Oh, you were just in time. All right, Helen, your report, please. Item 12.
All right, thank you. Now, I realise
Sorry, hang on now. So I've got to move we accept that Ross's report. Do I have a seconder? Leanne, thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's carried. Thank you. Thanks.
just on timing, I do have Brian